Whenever you plug your guitar into an audio interface or an amp or a pedal, there's an interaction that takes place there, and that interaction is called impedance, or Z for short. And believe it or not, impedance has a huge impact on your guitar tone, and that's why variable Z on MBOX Studio is such a valuable tool for guitarists. So let me do a quick demonstration and show you how different your tone can be depending on the impedance that you're using. I have my guitar plugged into input 2 on MBOX Studio, and I'm using the BrainWorks PT100 tube amp simulation on my computer. And use variable Z. I'm gonna select high Z as my input impedance. Let's hear what that sounds like. Switch our impedance down to 22K. This is a really, really low impedance setting. The high Z impedance gives us a clean, articulate, punchy feel. It sounds and feels like I'm playing through a tube amp. It's what I would expect. But the low Z impedance setting is a little too bassy. It's not super clear, a little muffled, and the response is just not what I'm looking for. It doesn't feel or sound like I'm playing through a real tube amp. And that's because guitars want to be plugged into a high Z input. If you're plugging into effects pedals or tube amps, then generally you're plugging into high Z inputs, and that interaction gives you the dynamics and the tone that you would expect coming out of your guitar. Low Z, on the other hand, is really optimized for microphones. Now at this point you might be thinking, okay, cool, high Z, low Z. As long as I have those two options, I'm good to go. Low Z for microphones, high Z for instruments. Again, not quite. Now, I want to show you why variable Z is so valuable for guitarists who use MBOX Studio to record guitars. I have a Pro Tools session that I'm working on, and I have 3 different guitar parts that I have really different requirements for each. I have different effects pedals, and one impedance for all 3 is just not going to cut it. So on the main riff for this song, I want it to be kind of a dark, sputtering fuzz sound, and to achieve that, I'm using the tri-knob fuzz plugin into a BrainWorks Sir PT100 amp plugin. Now, I know that the tri-knob fuzz is emulating an Electro-Harmonix Big Muff Pi, and the impedance on those pedals is notoriously low for a guitar pedal. It's around 100K. And that's what helps you achieve that Big Muff sound. It's that interaction. So if you're using any other impedance, this fuzz plugin is just not going to react the way that it would in real life. Toggle over to MBOX Control, and I'm going to use variable Z to change my input impedance. Now, like I said, normally you can expect about 100 kilo ohms input impedance on these Big Muffs. So I'm going to put mine right here at 90, and that's going to get us really close to the original sound. Let's go back to Pro Tools. I'm going to record enable this, and let's see what we got. So let me close out of these plugins, and let's press record and get this part down. Now, on my next guitar part, I want a super clean wah to really balance out that dirty part. I'm using the black shiny wah plugin on this track, and I'm actually not even using an amp simulator. I'm just going straight into the BF2A compressor to kind of balance it out and boost the volume. Typically, wah pedals have about 70 to 120 kilo ohms input impedance, but the beauty of variable Z is that you can test each one and find which one works for you. Now, I did this. I ran through all of these lower input impedances to find which one I liked the best with this wah, and I settled on 70K. Let's record enable our wah track and our wah control track. Here, my expression pedal is plugged into the back of MBOX Studio in the first expression foot switch input, and that's what I'm using to control this wah. For the next part of this song, we're entering kind of a breakdown where I'm just going to play a little solo. Again, I'm going to use the PT100, but I want to introduce to you something called a capacitor. When selecting your input impedance using variable Z, you're going to notice that all of these values are listed on their own and with a plus cap option. This takes your selected impedance and it adds a capacitor to it. A capacitor has very similar characteristics to a vacuum tube that you would find in regular tube amps. And this allows you to get that tube feel under your fingers even though you're playing a virtual amp on your computer. I'm going to use this 1 mega ohm plus cap option. 1 mega ohm is generally what you get as an input impedance for tube amps, and this capacitor makes it so that it really feels more like an amp. It gives me that vacuum tube feel on top of my regular input impedance. So let's go back over to Pro Tools. I'm going to record and enable my guitar solo track with this instance of PT100, and let's see what kind of tone we got. Impedance really is a spectrum. There's not just two options, and depending on the plugin that you're using, amp, effect, whatever, you need to have the right impedance for your guitar to feel natural, and that's where Variable Z really gives you an upper hand in recording direct.